I guess it's no surprise at all that AI is going to have a really profound impact on our future internet, and we've already started hearing about some really exciting things that AI will be able to do for us in the coming years. All of you must have seen some of the debates about potential downsize changes to the future of work, maybe the systematizing of bias and stereotypes in a way that all of us hopefully would like to get past. But what I really want to talk about today is how it's going to be deliberately used by criminals. So not accidental downsides of AI, but deliberate downsides of them. There have been some pretty racy headlines already, particularly in the last 12 months. But let's have some imagination about what's really likely and what might go on. This is going to be imagination, but I think it's realistic and well-founded in what we could build if we tried. And I understand there are a few investors here. Consider this my thesis on a high returns organization we could potentially create. Maybe see me afterwards when the cameras aren't on if you want to talk about it. Now, cybersecurity, sometimes a little bit dry. Sometimes if you think about it, you might feel like cybersecurity doesn't really make any progress whatsoever. Things seem as bad today as they've been for decades. But the reality is we have made a lot of progress. I'll give you an example. Even in the movies these days, we don't see people just simply typing into a command line, hack through the firewall, and suddenly they're inside of a business. Actually, it's true today, and I think it will remain true in the future, that if you want to hack your way inside of a business, the best way is by tricking someone that already works there. And in every business, there are people that works there, whether you're a super hardened cloud provider, a nuclear power station, whatever. There will be people, and people can be tricked. So imposters are what we need to worry about. Now, as culturally, we are making some progress. Many of you would recognize this as a spam email. This is a real one sent to me. I'm a bit of a stickler for professional grammar. That doesn't really appeal to me. Some machine somewhere has given some scores to this. It appears to be more than 8 out of 5, but has sent me the spam email anyway. I'm sure that was a worthwhile purchase. But the real reason I was really put off is if you're looking for love with me, don't send it to multiple recipients at once. At least have the decency to put our email addresses in one at a time. So I decided not to click on the attachment for this. I'm sure all of you wouldn't as well. But take a look at this one. This is also a genuinely malicious email sent to me, and it comes from a friend of mine. And really creepily, we talked about this only once. We'd never emailed about this in the past, but the previous day we walked from the front door of our office, which at the time was over in Pall Mall, to a Pret coffee shop to grab a sandwich at lunchtime. And we were discussing this as we walked. Almost certainly someone hanging outside of our offices with people's photos for exactly tailored spear phishing attacks, tailored spam email attacks. And the only reason why I knew something was off with this was because it's just too polite. This is not how Matt sends emails. He is not a smiley face guy. Afterwards, when we realised this was a problem, some other people in the organisation got similar things. We noticed things wrong with the signature. Most English speakers, native English speakers, wouldn't spell avenue like that. There are some problems further down. But I was just lucky that they didn't know how Matt sends emails. If it had come from anyone else that I didn't know how they communicated, I almost certainly would have opened the attachment. Or I'm not sure about the macros bit. So this is quite plausible, but it doesn't scale very well. If you are a criminal and you're trying to conduct a fast-growing business, you don't want to have to hand research these things yourself. Artisanal might be good in the bread or baking stakes, but it's not good in cybercrime. You want as many victims as possible. But what worries me about the future is when machines can do this tailoring on their own. And I want to give you some examples of what I think that's going to look like. So imagine a piece of malicious software running on your laptop. Ignore how it got there, but it's on your laptop already. And it can read your calendar, your email, your WhatsApp, your Slack, your iMessage, however you communicate. Once it can see that information, it can start training itself on how you communicate with different people in your life. And you will communicate, most of you will communicate differently with different people in your life. How you contact your partner will be different to how you email your boss maybe, or your customers. But we can learn that. We can replicate the style. And if you've seen anything like the bots you get on social media now, you'll know that repeating styles and understanding material is far more achievable these days. Once it's done this, it'll be able to contextually contact the people in your life to spread itself. If you've got a diary appointment with me, maybe it sends me an email and says, Dave, look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Here's a map to where we're meeting. Or if we've been sending a document back and forth and making changes, send it to me again. And in both of those cases, in the attachment, add a malicious payload. Will I open those things? Well, they're going to sound like they're from you. They're going to be contextually relevant from something else we've talked about in the past. And it's absolutely likely that I will open those things. Whether we've got a formal relationship, an informal one, a jokey one, those things can be learned and replicated. And if you're thinking the techies will save you, I think not. From a technical perspective, it's going to come from your real device via your real mail server, using your real mail accounts across the internet into all of my real stuff as well. Very difficult to recognize that. And I think it's going to be particularly appealing to criminals because it will explode across supply chains. If you want to have to go after a particular person in an organization, attack anyone inside of that organization. After some of the recent celebrity scandals we've had over the last couple of years, I suspect it may initially reveal itself in going after particular celebrities. If you want all the photos off of Taylor Swift's iPhone, this might be the best way of doing it, although I would not encourage that, because plenty of people have gone to jail for that sort of thing. So this is a really good idea. I'm convinced of it. And you might think it's far away, but I want to show you an example of why I think it's relatively close. This is an example from a company called X.AI, and you're all quite technically forward as I understand it, so maybe you use this. This is an AI calendar assistant who takes all the pain out of negotiating when you're going to have a meeting. Sounds perfect. If I wasn't paranoid, I would love this because scheduling's so boring. And here we've got someone called Mary. She's emailed someone called Greg and said, I'd love to meet, have a coffee. Greg replies and says, sure, let's meet, whatever he says, 30 minutes to my office, and copies in the AI assistant. The AI assistant knows where Greg's office is and lets Mary know, knows when he's free and in the office, and offers up a couple of time slots, all from recognizing the natural language. Mary replies, not realizing it's an AI probably, saying, I can do some of these, I can't do others. Amy continues to understand and says, sure, I can understand that, I'll send you an invite, and goes off and does so. If you pair this sort of natural language understanding with the style transfer that you get in social media bots, I think we're a long way into that automated spam sending or spear phishing. If you're thinking the cyber criminal bit of it might be hard, the technology to do the hacking, well, I can guarantee to you, you can just buy that from websites these days. They will come with a money-back guarantee. So if it doesn't successfully hack your victim, you'll get your money back. It will come with a call center. So if you get stuck when you're trying to set it up, you can ring someone who will be far more responsive than your bank will in making sure it'll get it to work. And that's where we are in the cybercrime economy at the moment. It's very diversified, and you're fighting a lot of people, not just one teenager in his bedroom or her bedroom. Do you have to be an absolute genius in terms of natural language processing to get it right? Well, I think these days, most second-year courses on AI or natural language processing would get you there. If you did, for instance, the Stanford one, I think that would give you all the skills you need. And these days, you don't have to get into Stanford anymore. You can do it on their online learning course. So you can just sit in Starbucks in Covent Garden and get it done. Or maybe talk to the next speaker who is absolutely an expert in natural language processing in this space. So this feels pretty imminent, and I think will be exciting when it comes out. But what else will AI be used for by digital criminals? Well, let's have the conversation again about microphones and video cameras. Most people will start, well, not most, but many people will have an Alexa or a Siri in their kitchen. Most of us will have the same on their phone. I walk around with one on my arm, as many of you do as well. And in our home life, we've kind of sort of looked at this. We hear that CIA goes around hacking smart TVs and go, you know, if they want to see me in my pajamas, who cares? You know, I don't do much in my lounge anyway. But you do stuff in your businesses, and I think that's where the risk balance needs to change. I was saying to David earlier, we've already worked with a law firm here in London where the video conferencing units were deliberately attacked within the boardroom and some of the other major meeting rooms in the organisation. Why go after the data and the databases that are well looked after when you can just hack the very easy to get into, typically pieces of IoT, the phones or the smart TVs in the video conferencing units, so you can listen to what goes on inside of the most sensitive meetings that organisation has. So good idea, but I don't think criminals become criminals because they want to go to more meetings. In fact, my thesis is if you want to harm a large number of people and go to a lot of meetings, you join the government rather than becoming a criminal. So I think we're going to automate this as well. And no worries, you don't have to invent this yourself either. Stream the audio you're getting from a video conferencing unit to Google, to Amazon, to Microsoft, or some specialist firms, and they will give you back a thing of text with a pretty good gist of what happened in that conversation. Doesn't need to happen in real time, so the quality will be higher. Maybe get it 30 minutes after the meeting happened. And you can do it all over the world because this will speak more languages than you do, even if you're a professional linguist. So that's pretty good. So we'll get all of this stuff in. Can we make money from this? Well, probably we could extort some clients of law firms. Maybe we'll hear about some undisclosed mergers and acquisitions. I think we could make money from it. But maybe we're also worried about getting caught and we don't want to stream out video conferencing units all the time. So why don't we make sure that only the right people are in the room before we turn on the video streaming? You could run this on your smart TV these days. You don't have to write it. You just send a picture of everyone in the room's face to this API, and they will send you back a list of whether it matches one of your intended victims. Far stealthier than listening to every meeting in the meeting rooms all the time, and very difficult to find out that attack is in place. I can guarantee you aren't running antivirus on your smart TVs. So this will be pretty exciting. I think it is going to go on. I think if you're having really sensitive discussions, you're far more likely to have them in person than you are to send an email to each other about it, especially if you're worried about disclosure. And for a long time, we've thought, you know, this is what science fiction talks about. This is what spies do. But I think the reality is criminals will do it. Now it's easy to automate. But smart software will also enable a much more subtle class of attacks, particularly if you want to harm a company. And I deliberately talk about oil and gas here because it's easy to imagine the types of groups of people that might want to harm an oil and gas company. And also I love this picture. Oil and gas firms do have a lot of enemies though. They worry that someone could turn off an oil rig or interrupt its production for a while. But the reality is if you create a visible crisis, then the organisation will respond to that. There's almost always manual overrides, and that's especially true, on safety critical infrastructure like this one. So if it was me and I wanted to do major harm to an oil and gas company, I'd start changing the geophysical survey data so that the drilling and the mining rights are bought in the wrong places and the oil rigs get sent to places where they're going to come up dry. It might take far longer to harm the company, but in total more damaging. And what's exciting about this is we're fundamentally changing the beliefs of the organisation. They will run lots of spreadsheets and calculations that tell them they're going to be billionaires by going to this little bit here, but it will be rubbish, of course. But maybe we don't want to get caught in the survey databases. It might be too obvious if they start realising there are some problems. So why don't we go after the information supply chain, the actual Internet of Things that they will use to collect all this data up in the first place? These submarines are absolutely amazing. They normally run in fleets of hundreds or many hundreds, and they're super clever. They get towed on cables by big ships. They don't fly into each other. They reconstruct an amazingly detailed view of what's going on under the surface of the Earth and on the surface of the Earth. But again, they're not running antivirus on there. And if you can start to manipulate the beliefs of an organisation by being on the edge of their information supply chain rather than trying to break your way into Amazon and affect their databases, then I think you could well be very successful. So putting all these things together, is AI going to have an impact? Yes, it is. It's not going to increase the volume of attacks. Being on the internet now is like having your doors and windows constantly rattled. But I think when things get inside of your business, they will start to be far more successfully damaging than they have been in the past. When I started this research just over 2 years ago, I used to talk about this as hey, this is an exciting theoretical thing that's a long way away, but I've really changed my mind on that as I've shown you on some of the APIs and how accessible some of these ideas are. There are really no technical obstacles to embracing these sorts of highly automated criminal business models in future. And this is where I think there are going to be some high growth criminal organizations, the ones that seek to automate the most, the fastest, that reduce the risk of someone going to jail and squawking on them, so putting them at risk. But anyway, this is my thesis. AI absolutely is going to be used by criminals. It's not going to be used because it's just cool, although it will be cool and entertaining to see some of these things. It's going to be used because it will allow them to automate to far more victims than they ever would have been able to before. Thank you very much.